group.
We face discrimination differently depending on factors such as ethnicity, age, socioeconomic status, and more.
Rainier Avenue Radio is proud to amplify women's voices.
They are the experts of their own lives, initiating conversations within their community about challenges they face, the solutions they're working on, and the opportunities they see.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 for Women's Voices on Air. We know our challenges. We are the experts of our lives.
We are master multitaskers, prioritizing our family, friends, and our faith above our own needs.
Our needs and voices are too often overlooked.
Please join us this Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. for Women's Voices on Air.
We tell our stories in our own way.
This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio. A new study ranks Seattle as the second healthiest city in the nation. The study by personal finance website Wallet Hub compared more than 180 of the largest U.S. cities across 44 key metrics, from the cost of medical visits to fruit and vegetable consumption to fitness clubs per capita. Seattle came in second in the nation for green space as measured by parkland acreage per capita, hiking trails per capita, and number of bike riders and walkers. San Francisco ranked as the nation's healthiest city, with Seattle as a close second. Portland, Oregon was ranked as third healthiest. Seattle posted some impressive scores in individual areas as well, ranking first in the nation for its share of physically active adults and fourth for most running and walking trails per capita. The nation's least healthy city, according to the study, is Brownsville, Texas. Other cities ranking in the bottom 5 are Laredo, Texas, Gulfport, Mississippi, Shreveport, Louisiana, and Memphis, Tennessee.
And that's your news on Rainier Avenue Radio.
Dealing with COVID-19 is uncharted territory, and everyone has different challenges. People may feel anxious, down, or overwhelmed. For some, these feelings can lead to changes in sleep patterns, an increased use of alcohol or drugs, or withdrawing from the people around them. If you know someone who's having a hard time coping, you can help by reaching out to talk and listen. To learn more about how you can help someone in need, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 800-273-TALK. Brought to you by the state of Washington.
You're listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world. Check us out on social media. Facebook and Instagram, RainierAvenueRadio.world, and on Twitter at RainierAvRadio.
You're listening to Heartbeat Radio. I'm your host, Cindi Bright. Heartbeat Radio is a conversation aimed to take the pulse of corporate America. Opportunities for people of color, we're getting lost in the shuffle of change. I'm that provocateur of change. The hearts of corporate America are addressed. Access and opportunities will be accelerated for all people. Through Heartbeat Radio, you will gain a deeper understanding of what is necessary for change.
Welcome to Heartbeat Radio, everybody, this evening. I apologize, we're running a little behind schedule tonight. We had a town hall right before our show in the community. So thank you for staying with me here as we have the Honorable Representative Sharon Tomiko Santos joining us tonight. Before I introduce her and before I introduce Joy Stanford, my co-host, in with me, I just want to take a moment to just kind of set the stage. During Black History Month and every other day in Rainier Avenue Radio, we are focused on advancing the lives of Black people. And so it is in that spirit that we're going to have a conversation this evening about public education. So let me first welcome in co-host back on with me tonight, Joy Stanford, and let me immediately bring in Representative Sharon Tomiko Santos and offer her my sincere apology for running behind, because I know your schedule is intense and I know you're in session right now. So Representative Santos, welcome to Heartbeat Radio. It looks like your mic and video might be turned off. Bless her heart, she was listening to the prior show probably and had to mute it. There you are.
Oh. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So sorry we're running behind today. I'm glad you have the time to meet with us tonight.
Absolutely. Well, a town hall meeting is very important. So
yes. This is your district we're in doing this show. So we are really grateful to have you on to have this conversation that we need to have about public education here in the state of Washington. Do you know Joy Stanford also?
I believe we've met before. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I've come to several of your accountability committee meetings.
That's right.
Over the past couple of years. So I've sat in and listened to several of those. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Representative Santos, maybe we could start off by just having you talk to our listeners about your vision for public education here in the state of Washington.
Oh boy, that'll take the whole 30 minutes. No, let me just start with a couple of maybe grounding facts, because I appreciate the question of what's the vision here. And so the first fact that I'd like to ground myself in is that I was raised in this district. I attended elementary school, junior high school, and I'm a proud graduate of Franklin High School, and I don't want to hear from any of those folks from Cleveland or Garfield or Rainier Beach, but no, I'm kidding. I am a product of this district, and when I was in high school, we had the challenges that have always plagued children of color and public education. And as a high school student, I helped lead desegregation efforts, because at that point in time, we thought that desegregation was the best way to get equitable resources to every student in the district. Sadly, that's not the truth. There are other things that have to happen, but that is one grounding piece I'd like to share with you. The second piece that I'd like to share with you, which is grounding, is I'm the daughter of a teacher. She taught in the Seattle Public Schools. She was what we then and today call a special education teacher. Her students were the most severely, they had severe intellectual, cognitive, as well as physical and medical disabilities. And I learned a lot from being the daughter of a teacher, and they really helped shape my philosophy. And I'd like to share that with you, because that is key to my vision.
Okay.
And my philosophy is this. Every child has their own ambitions and aspirations, and they're not the same. They're all different. Every child has their own abilities and talents, but they're not all the same. They're different. And finally, every child has assets and advantages, but they're not all the same. And the problem with our common school system is that it is still working and living by the Industrial Revolution, a 19th century factory model that treats every child like a widget and says that every child has to come out with the same kinds of skills, same level of skills, same interests, and we know that's not true. So what I envision for Washington State is an education system that is able to meet every child where he or she or they are, to incorporate the family as part of the assets that child brings, to incorporate that child's community and culture as what that child brings, and to help engage that student in what they are interested in, so that they have a sense of ownership and agency about their education. And I think if we can correct some of those pieces, we will do a much better job of meeting graduation statistics. I think we will do a much better job of having students who are deep learners, and more important, they will be lifelong learners.
Well, what does that all mean in terms of how you have approached solving or progressing some of the issues? And maybe said different, you just referenced, the opportunity gaps. As I went on and looked at the OSPI report card on Black children, Hispanic children, and Pacific Island children, clearly there's a significant problem. And so what's your view about then, given how you set the stage for your view about meeting kids where they're at and families where they're at, and my words of paraphrasing that is looking at the whole child. We are leaving behind, and a significant amount of children in our state, and tell our listeners what we're doing to tackle that, and what progress have we made under your leadership in this space?
Mm-hmm. I think those are very important questions. And I would start by saying, and this is not an excuse, this is a statement of fact, which is we have never had an equitable, universal public education system for students of color. Never have had it. This education system is built on discrimination and disproportionality. And so we have to eliminate many of the primary features of it, beginning with the idea that the system holds all of the answers. And that's one of the reasons that we created the Educational Opportunity Gap Oversight and Accountability Committee that Ms. Joy was just referencing. And I'm proud of having had a hand in creating that, where we began, frankly, with community voice. At my request, the legislature invested money into commissioning studies at the community level, inviting members of the community to inform the state about what are the barriers to success for your student in our educational system. Those ethnic studies, if you will, commission studies, served as the foundation for showing the legislature and other parts of our government that our communities, our African American communities, descendants of slaves, our Asian communities, our Pacific Islander communities, our Latinx communities, our Native communities, our immigrant communities have the same desire and aspirations for success for our children. And so if we all have the same foundational aspirations, why is it that our children are universally, and not just in this state, universally being disserved? And so I'm proud that we were able to put a finger on it and say we have to have a body in state government that can help advise the governor and the legislature about where to make investments, how to make program changes, etc. We are the first in the nation to have done so. And yet progress is so slow. It is frustratingly slow. And at the same time, we are constantly bringing new people into the legislature that have to be taught again. And so I'm not going to make excuses for the slowness of the pace, because it is damn slow and I'm not satisfied with it. And yet at the same time, where we are today is not where we were when we started this commission back in 2009. We now have disaggregated data. We had to fight. I had to fight with all of the institutions to say, no, don't clump all of these students of color together. We need to see individual students. I had to fight the superintendent of public instruction to make sure that we used an N size of 10 rather than 20, because it's too easy to hide students in those numbers. It is a constant fight to have folks who don't understand that what needs to happen is a dismantling of the system before we can put it together and realize the opportunities that we can create for our students.
Let's talk about that and the dismantling of it, because when you look at the data, or when I was reviewing the report card on it, there are some students doing fairly well. The Asian students seem to be progressing at a faster rate than the other kids of color. So why is that, I guess, is my first question. And then secondly, if you think about dismantling a system, that implies that something is grossly wrong. Like, there's no way any of us could sit here and have a conversation and say, You've been referencing 2009 and it's 2021. And we have a reckoning happening in our country right now. We don't have another 10 years to be bucking up against a system that is not here to serve us. So what is it that we as the community, what is it that you as the legislator, like what is it that is getting in the way of this progress? I know there's a lot of bureaucracy, but what is it we can do?
Well, let me just start with this. I have now been in the legislature, this is my 23rd year. When I was elected in the same year that this state voted in Initiative 200. I have spent every one of my 23 years since then trying to overturn that. So I think part of the question is not asking necessarily about what have you done. It's how can I be successful? And I cannot be successful unless I have 97 other members of the legislature, or let's not even say 97, because I only need half of them. So 49 other members of the House and 25 members of the Senate and the governor all saying this is what we need. But that is not, it sounds easy and it's not. I will tell you that one of the bills that I've been trying to push for the last 7 years is to create an Office of Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises that actually has teeth to be able to disbar and decertify those bad actors who are pretending to be women or minority-owned businesses, but they're actually front companies, to be able to then work with our state agencies. So one of the things that I think is a basic understanding of civic engagement is that this is a slow process, but we should not give up. Now, the other question, and I really need you to hear me when you say that Asians seem to be progressing at a faster rate. That's why we asked for disaggregated data, because if you look into the deeper data, what you just said is not true. You look into the data around our Hmong children, and they are actually lagging as much as some of our Latinx students. Mm-hmm. If you look into the data, you will find that that Pacific Islander students have even more horrific data associated with academics and discipline than African American students or Native students. And while I was successful in getting the Pacific Islanders broken off, it's been still a fight around disaggregating the data for all students. And that's why I keep insisting we have to have a system that meets each child where he or she or they are.
And is that data still all together today in 2021? Is that data still, what you're saying, is it's still clumped together? It's not separate.
So so there are two things and I had to fight with the superintendent on this as well, which is, so first of all, we had to collect all the data and get the school districts to do so. And they were reluctant to do so because they felt it would be take up too much time. The second thing, though, is then, and this is a legitimate issue that I understand, but it's the balance between how can we see each and every child if we don't collect information about each and every child, and then if we don't report each and every child. So I said we wanted an N size of 10. So that is what they use for their analysis, but for their reporting, they have they started with trying to report with 20, and I informed them that the law that we passed said an N size of 10. So they went back and they decided to do an N size of 10 over a 3-year process, which I'm hoping will give us better data. But the problem, I will tell you, Joy, is there's an issue around privacy. So if you are doing the disaggregation and the reporting on a disaggregated basis, and you have a school, let's say, that has only three, well, let's not say three, let's say 8 students who may be Russian. If they only have 8 students and we've said, 11 students that are Russian, and we said the disaggregation has to be a minimum of 10, you know who all of those Russian students are, right? So that's the balance that I've been having with a push and pull with the superintendent around, is to make sure we get enough data so that we know how to adjust the policies to focus on who needs support and what kind of support do they need. I'm also very proud, and I just need to say this because it surprises me how much people are not always aware of what the legislature does. And it makes sense because most people are more connected to their school or to their school district. So they know what's happening to them at their local level. But one of the things that the EOGOAC passed is a major overhaul of our discipline laws in the state of Washington.
I was in the room when you guys were putting that together. Yes.
Yep. And Joy, that was significant insofar that we said, no, first of all, every student who resides within the borders of the state of Washington has a positive right. That is a deeper right than a constitutional right or any other kind of right. It is a deep right. And every student has a positive right to a basic education by our Constitution. And that was reaffirmed by our Supreme Court back when they ruled on McCleary. We used that argument to point out that schools that put students in a disciplinary status are regularly withholding the educational services from those students. So what happens when they come out of a disciplinary status? They're behind, right? And it becomes one of those treadmills where you can never get ahead because you're always trying to catch up. And so we historical piece of that legislation is we told school districts that, first of all, you cannot do any type of discretionary discipline. That is not allowed. Or discretionary suspensions. If you do a long-term suspension, it must be for one of these really high-level issues, like a student bringing a gun to school, or I can't remember what some of the others are, but it cannot be on a situation of defiance, which was very common in the disciplinary examples. And even if you do put a student into suspension, by the way, school district, you're still on the hook for delivering educational services that are equitable to what they would receive in school. You don't get off the hook for not teaching that child. And as far as I know, we might be one of the only states to have such a law on the books.
Let me ask you, I appreciate you explaining all this. It's helpful to hear you talk about particularly the breakdown or the way the data is represented on the website versus what's actually going on behind the scenes. Data is a point of reference, but let's talk policy. What policies have you progressed or implemented that support the learning that have made brown and black kids successful? What are those policies that assist with that?
Well, I will say that I'm very proud that there are many, and then they break on multiple characteristics, if you will. Certainly, I'm going to start by pointing to the groundbreaking omnibus legislation that was adopted in 2016, House Bill 1451, which adopted the recommendations of the Educational Opportunity Gap Oversight and Accountability Committee. And that omnibus legislation covered the disciplinary practices that I just talked about. It talked about recruiting and retaining teachers of color and identifying what are the barriers to having more adults in the classrooms and in our schools that look like our students. Separately, we also talked about the need for cultural competency, both in our teacher colleges as well as in ongoing professional development for our teachers. We talked about the need for our immigrant students who are often when they are engaged in their English acquisition classes, it's usually in a pull-out fashion. And so those students also end up falling behind academically because they're being pulled out to learn conversational English. And so some of the educating we had to do of educators as well as policymakers is there's really three kinds of English. There's conversational English, which we're all speaking right now, but then there's academic English. And that's a different kind of English where you're talking about, math concepts, or actually that's the third one, where you're talking about, prepositions or grammar or those kinds of things. And then the third one is specialized academic English, where you really are talking about, so what is a hyperbole, or what is a quadratic triangle? Those are very specialized academic things. And what our schools had been doing up to that point was doing pullout for conversational English, which was not helping our bilingual students. The bill, this was also the bill that put into place the data disaggregation requirement of the school districts. And it seems to me that there's some other elements that I cannot recall off the top of my head, but I think the question that may be stirring around in your mind, which is a fair question, is, okay, that was in 2016. What's up with that right now? Well, when you, as you pointed out, schools are part of a large bureaucracy. It has taken some time to develop rules around discipline, for example, and then to provide the professional development so that our educators and our administrators understand what is defiance. That's actually could be your cultural bias interfering with something a child is trying to communicate to you. It's one of the reasons that we had such a large, complicated bill, is that we pointed out these are all interdependent and mutually reinforcing notions. So if we keep with the disciplinary example, we can point out that oftentimes some of the discretionary discipline instances had to do with a lack of cultural competency on the part of the adult in knowing how to work with a student. And so why is there such a lack of cultural competency among our educators? Well, one of the reasons is because we have such a dearth of teachers of color. And so making sure that we're going at both of those issues at the same time is very important. But as you can imagine, doing all of these things at the same time, one, costs money, two, takes time, but we are beginning, I think, to see and reap some of the benefits. We're also not letting our foot off the gas, and we are looking at, even this year, we're taking a look at how do we create pathways to graduation that accommodate every student. And, when the 24 credit high school graduation went into place, and I fought against that because I felt like, first of all, I know from experience in my own family, not everyone is going to be destined for a 4-year university or college experience.
That's true.
Some people are going to do just as well going to a 2-year college or going to an apprenticeship program where you can finish your apprenticeship, and doggone it, you're making good money when you come out of that apprenticeship program, and you've got health benefits and a pension plan. But you also have students who kind of stumble by following what they enjoy to a fulfilling career. And so that's one of the reasons I believe so strongly that we have to engage our students and sort of tease out of them, where are your interests? Where do you think, you have great skills that you'd like to deepen? And so we've had to fight, frankly, the business community. And largely when I talk about the business community, I'm talking about what they call the education roundtable. This would be folks that are the business CEOs that are backed by Boeing, by Microsoft, by Amazon, by Google, by Seattle Times, who all believe that that the system is a failure unless it produces 100% of graduates that are 4-year college bound. Well, that's a very false vision of what the future is.
Well, can I ask a question?
Of course, I'm sorry.
It's not that I'm disagreeing with you. I mean, and it's not that I'm disagreeing with the business community. I think there's two things you've said this evening that make my eyebrows raise up a little bit, right? One of them is earlier in the conversation, you referenced deep thinkers. And so I want to talk about that a little bit more because how I heard that may not have been how you meant it. So I want to clarify that. But in the 24 credit graduation system, I mean, I guess the question is, are we doing Black kids a disservice by lowering that requirement? And particularly if people are viewing them as people who are not deep thinkers. I mean, that seems to make those two connected for me as you're talking about it, because I want to make sure,
So you need to take off your I would say your preconceived, and we all have them. I'm not, not picking on you. Our preconceptions are based on what we experienced, right? Going through school. We compare ourselves a lot to international systems of education. We wring our hands and say, why hasn't the United States done a better job? Well, I guess what I would point out after having done some deep studies of these international systems is that one, in these other systems, they're what we would call a high school graduate is actually a more like a college graduate. They also adopt a position of there is no wrong door. So every student is going to go on to a secondary education. So let's talk about it in those terms, a secondary education.
No matter what that is. No matter what that is.
Yeah, so secondary education is high school. We call it high school.
Okay.
Every student is going to go to a secondary education system that helps them then move into their post-secondary goals. So post-secondary is after you graduate from high school. In these high-performing nations, what they say is there's no wrong door. Every student will graduate from a secondary system. Some will go into a 4-year university. Some will go into what we would identify as our community and technical colleges. So it's a technical university to learn trades or that sort of thing. And some will go into apprenticeships. So the difference between those high performing systems and our system is our system says there's only one way, and it's a 4-year college degree. Those systems say every avenue is appropriate. And when I say deep thinkers, again, I'm going to make the clarifying statement that when I say a deep thinker, I am talking about somebody who has critical thinking skills, who is able to do their own research and come to their own conclusions, who is somebody who is able to take their learning and apply it. And if the result is not what they expected or what they have been told to expect, then to go re-engineer backwards to figure out, okay, what went wrong? Or did I start off with an incorrect hypothesis? But that they can apply those types of thinking, what I'm calling deep thinking, in a wide variety of circumstances. It's what we call the transferable knowledge and skills of the 21st century.
So then I'm going to push back on that and say, are we producing that? Are we nurturing that? Are we making sure that we are preparing and setting our kids up to be those deep thinkers?
Well, not as long as we have a 24 credit graduation requirement. That's why I've opposed it.
Let me come at this different, because you were comfortable saying to me, Cindi, you're listening to this through your filter. And I'm going to say, Representative Santos, you're commenting through your filter on this. Because my pushback to you is, I'm not disagreeing that there's trades and there's other ways that people go into the world. But to lower the bar, we are in the state of Washington, in the hub of massive business here. And massive business here is where economics, generational wealth, where money can be made by Black people. And trust me when I tell you, I tackle corporate America too. So you're not the only one I'm having this conversation with. But don't we owe it to our Black kids here to prepare them to be able to go into these organizations and be able to have the same kind of life that other people have, the white people have? If we lower that bar and we think that they're not critical thinkers because we haven't focused our energies on developing these skills, because that's a whole nother animal that we can't even get into on the show tonight. I'm challenging that school of thought, because
I think you're really reworking what I'm saying to you. First of all, let's start with the 24 credits.
Okay.
What does 24 credits tell you about that person's aptitude or their knowledge or what they can do or what their ability or capacity to learn is? 24 credits doesn't tell you or me anything. You talk to most employers and they want to know if you got maybe a high school diploma. They're probably, in some businesses, they care whether you've received a college diploma. Yes. And I guess I don't see that I am saying anything about lowering the bar. I am saying that the standards that we want all children to achieve does not have to be measured in the form of credits, but that's the way that our educational system has been built up. So that's the only way that we can see it. But if I can if you were to say part of the 3 credit science requirement, which includes a lab science, so you're going to say, yes, I'm taking chemistry. What does that tell you about what the student can do? I can still say, if a student has produced a major exhibition of, excuse me.
There's an Amber Alert going on all of our phones right now.
Yeah.
I understand your point. Yeah. I understand your point.
So I'm not talking, I've never said lower the bar. I never ever said that. Somebody translated that when I said I fought 24 credits. But that was not me. The other thing is, I absolutely believe, I'm not going to go down there. I absolutely believe that every child can learn. That was the piece that I came out of being the daughter of an educator. My mom was teaching some of the most challenged students, but they could learn. And that is an important attitude, is I know every child can learn, but not every child learns the same way. And not every child is desirous of having a, as I said, sort of an industrial revolution type of high school diploma. Let's not forget, the standard for everybody just 2 generations ago was an 8th grade education. And that didn't matter if you were white or black or Asian or whatever. The people who went on to universities were not because that was what compulsory education was about. It's because they had the wealth to be able to go on.
Santos, we are almost at the hour. I just have one more question to ask you before we wrap. Again, I apologize we ran so late today. Did you catch the article in the Seattle Times today about the online schools? Did you read what's going on about the online schools that are being set up and money is flowing outside of the state of Washington to outside of our public education system to fund those? Did you catch that, and what are your views on that?
No, I did not. I've been, this is, a deadline period for the legislature. So I've been headlong into legislative meetings and hearings. So I'm not familiar with the article you're referencing.
All right. I will, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm so sorry we ran late tonight. Our community needs to hear from representatives and the people who are out in Olympia. And so our challenges and our pushing and our questions are because we as Black people are looking for progress. We are not looking to hear excuses anymore about why things have taken so long. We've got to start making things better for our kids. So,
and that would include my grandsons. That would include my babies. I have Black babies. So, I mean, I guess I don't want this to be a Black, a white, Asian thing. I grew up in this district, and I have the same desires and dreams for my grandbabies that you do for yours. And
Black thing when the Black people are being left behind, and
as are my grandchildren.
Yes.
So yes, I have a vested interest in this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Representative Santos.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
For our listeners, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for being with us and staying with us through the duration of this tonight. We look forward to seeing all of you next week, and we are going live to Columbia City right now. I don't even know who's going up in concert, but stay tuned for the next show. Thank you, Representative Santos.
Thank you, Representative Santos.
That up in Saks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yo.